Rachel and I'm here today to talk about the books I read in the month of January. January was a really good reading month for me and I haven't done a wrap up in a really long time, but I was like, I can actually wrap up some books. I've actually been reading a lot. So yeah, I'm just going to talk about those today. On Goodreads, it says I read 12 books in the month of January. However, I think some things weren't on Goodreads and then some things were just very short, so don't really count. So yeah, I don't know whether I'd say I read 12 things in January, but yeah, we'll run with that anyway. I'm gonna also be looking at my phone to see what ratings I gave things because I can never remember. So some of these you may have seen in a reading vlog. Actually, I've not put that up yet, so you won't have seen it, but you may see again in a reading vlog. But the first one I read is Autumn Wild by Christina Buckinski. This is just a really small little zine about autumn and plants in autumn and what you can do with them. It's very sweet, very cute, and I really enjoyed this little one. I always enjoy Christina Buckinski stuff because she is such a good illustrator, so this was great. I'm thinking if Percy moves over we can try and put the books on there. That'll work, I think. Then I read The Moth and the Flame. This is by Jenny Clemens. It's a very small little story about a moth that falls in love with a flame, obviously from the saying, and how she gets on, which, spoiler alert, isn't great because she's a moth and it's a flame. But yeah, we enjoyed that. It was cute. I've not actually said what ratings I gave those. So Autumn Wild, I think, was one of the ones that wasn't on Goodreads. Probably maybe like 3 or 4 stars, something like that. The Moth and the Flame, I gave 3 stars. And then we have The Paupers Prince. This is by Rebecca Burgess and this is volume 1. I think this is from a Kickstart or a tapas, trying to get the story out there type of deal. This is one of the books that isn't on Goodreads either. In terms of what I'd rate it, it'd probably be between a 2 and 3 stars, but that's because there isn't a lot of plot and story going on, but it's because it is just a little volume to try and like kickstart the career of this like graphic novel as a book, I guess, or a series. Although it's not rated very highly, it's not really a full completed story, if you get what I mean. In terms of character development and stuff, I'd rate it really highly, so yeah, would recommend this, and I'm excited for when like she has a full book, because I do actually think she will end up with a full book out of this because it's great. It's about a prince who has autism and has a lot of expectations put on him, but obviously finds them very difficult because it's a lot to do with like socializing and things, and he has autism. And then it's about a pauper, so one of the common people, who wants to get into the royalty circle. Like, he wants to work within the castle walls, studies really hard and manages to get himself there, and then it's about how these two come to meet and interact. And yeah, it's a brilliant premise and great so far. It just wasn't a complete story, if that makes sense. We have Not Enough. I've tried to put these in an order of how much I enjoyed them, so this isn't in the order that I read them, but Not Enough I gave 2 stars. I will say I think it would get higher if I was a child. It is very much aimed at children, and there is another graphic novel that I read this month that's also a middle grade, and it's aimed at children, but I enjoyed it so much more than this one, which is why I've rated it low, because actually I do enjoy a lot of like middle grade graphic novels, so I don't necessarily think that I should mark it up just because I'm not a child, if you get what I mean. But this was really sweet. So it's about a girl called Nat, and she is very socially awkward, thinks too much about the people around her and what they think about her, and it's how she comes to have a little bit more self-confidence in herself, in her talent and her abilities, kind of make friends with the right people instead of always waiting for the wrong people to give her attention. I enjoyed it, it was alright, so I gave it 2 stars. Next we have Rizalka, and this is by Camilla Kroll. This is part 1, and this is also a little like zine graphic novel type thing, and I gave this 3 stars. I really enjoyed this. So it has like this greeny wash underneath, inspired by Slavic mythology. And it's about this woman called Rizalka who lives in the water. Camilla Kroll basically built out the ideas that she'd heard of. So a lot of the mythology around this being or person is in paintings and popular culture. So she was kind of building the story out of how she thinks Rizalka came to be. Really enjoyed this, would really recommend it. Less to do with the story, although the story is great, but the artwork in here is phenomenal. I really enjoyed it. Would highly recommend this bad boy. Then we have another 3-star, which is Our Super Canadian Adventure and Our Super Adventure Travelogue by Sarah Grayley and Steph Purinins. I don't know if I said that right. So I had come across Sarah Grayley before because she writes the Kim Reaper series, which I really enjoy. Oh, I've only read 2 volumes, but I really enjoy the volumes that I've read anyway. This is a little bit different because this is a non-fiction about her and her partner traveling around Canada and all of the things that they did. And it's kind of done a lot through illustrations. You also have images and pictures from their holiday. There's like tickets in here as well. It's just a really sweet little read. I absolutely love graphic novels that feature like traveling, so this was a really great one for me and I did really enjoy it. I ended up giving it 3 stars. I think mainly because it's hard to give anything higher when it's so short, but I did really enjoy this one. And then the next one, so I actually read all of these stories in one sitting. I read it while I was in bed in the morning while my partner was asleep, and it was a weekend and I wanted to stay in bed and be warm. It is 24/7, 1 day, 7 artists, 7 comics and 1 book. So apparently this is a very common challenge in the like illustrator comic-y type of world, in the way that like NaNoWriMo is popular for writers. I think it's in 24 hours. There's 7 people in here and the challenge is to have done an entire story, come up with the idea, storyboard it, draw it all out, just everything in 24 hours. They do say, so Dan Berry who edited it, they say that they did let people have a little bit of brainstorming. They were allowed to like bring ideas in, but they weren't allowed to draw anything, illustrate anything, like it all had to be from scratch. So they kind of cheated but kind of didn't, and I don't really care because there's some absolutely amazing stories in here. So the reason, so my best friend got me this for Christmas, and the reason that she got me this is because Christina Buckinski's in it, who I was on about before with Autumn Wild. Absolutely love Christina Buckinski. However, hers was not my favourite story in here. Let me tell you that. The story from Joe Desi was pretty good. I really liked that. I Blame Grandma. I did enjoy the Christina Buckinski one. There's no text, and I struggle with stories that have no writing. Oh, it was this one, Fumio Abata, and their story is about someone who like they should go to the police and own up to what they've done, and it kind of has a little bit of a twist at the end, which I really like. And then I loved this one about Tom Hand and the tattoos, and this one was by Warwick Johnson Cadwell. So there was quite a few in here that I really loved, and I ended up giving this 4 stars, which I think is a really good rating for what is essentially like a short story collection, because it can be really middle of the road with stuff like that, because there'll be some that you really don't like and you find boring, and then some that you adore, and I really loved a lot of these. So yeah, this was definitely a success and I would highly recommend it. It was fantastic. I just dropped my paper. Any books that I didn't have a physical copy of but needed to be in this ranking of how much I enjoyed them are on a little note card for me to remember. I just dropped it on the floor. Anyway, the next book I gave 2 stars, and it was The Girl, the Penguin, the Homeschooling and the Gin. I actually, now that I'm looking at it, wish that these 2 had been swapped around. I enjoyed that one more than this one. So let's just pretend, because I'm not going to edit it that way. So this is a like Mickey taking version of, I'll try and remember, I know it's The Horse, the Boy, the Mole and something else. I can't remember the entire name of that book. I actually did read that book and it was good. I don't understand why it kind of took over the world as being like, oh my god, this is such a best-selling book. I didn't really get it. So when I saw this, number one, it's got a penguin. and I love penguins. That was the main reason I bought it. But number 2, I was like, I actually think a parody or a mocking version of that would be really funny, because like I felt like I was kind of rolling my eyes at it as I was reading it. It's kind of successful in what it's trying to do, but to be honest, it's not the most successful thing ever. Me and my partner read this one night before bed, and yeah, ended up with a 2-star. It was alright, but yeah, it was just past the time, shall we say. That's kind of where we're at with that one. So the next one is Roller Girl, which is the other middle grade graphic novel that I read this month, and I gave it 4 stars. So this is by Victoria Jameson, and this is an example of how to do middle grade well. With Not Enough, I think it was too simplistic. Like, you know when someone's trying to give you a message but it's just over the top, and it's so obvious that it's trying to give you a message that it makes you just like roll your eyes and not enjoy it? It was kind of that vibe. Whereas Roller Girl had a very similar message about being accepting of the hobbies that you have and the things that you want to do, and you and your friends don't have to like the same things all the time. Going to a new place and trying something really challenging and making new friends is also fine. You can have new friends and old friends and yeah, all that stuff. Like, it had a very similar vibe to Not Enough, but it was so much better, like so much better. Roller Girl is about a girl who is going to a summer camp for roller skating, like roller rink American type roller skating. Basically she wants to be a roller girl, which is a sport. It does explain it very well in the book, but I've forgotten now. A sport where you try and chase a person who is the designated like person to catch, and if they get all the way to the other side they win, and you have all these other people who try and attack them. And it's got Drew Barrymore in, and it's got this person in it and I can't remember. Anyway, yeah, there's a film that's very similar. I'll put a picture on if I remember what it's called. But yeah, it's that sport. Anyway, and this one is just fantastic. Like, I love the illustration, I love the characters. The main character in it is so good. She's the perfect amount of like bratty, rebellious, but also just like the insecurity of like teenage girls, and she's just perfect, and the whole thing is perfect. I really enjoyed it and would highly recommend it over Not Enough as well. Next we have a little bit of a sad situation. So I'm going to tell you first that I gave this book 3 stars because I wrote notes about it on my phone when I finished it because I was annoyed. So I will tell you, number 1, that I listened to this on audiobook. I didn't read the physical book. Yeah, I was very excited for this, and I enjoyed the first section of it, which is something that when I've looked into it, a lot of people were very annoyed at the first section of it and didn't enjoy it at all. Don't know if that's good or not. Maybe it's just me having a terrible opinion on things. But the book is Find Me by Andre Aciman. If you have watched this channel for a while, which I'm pretty sure there's no one still watching this channel seeing as I've made no videos for a year, but if you watch my channel before, and I will link a video, I loved Call Me By Your Name. I did a video just like gushing about it and how much I loved it, and it really struck a chord with me in a really special kind of way. Like, it wasn't just oh, this is a 5-star book. It was a 5-star, and it was like my favourite book of the year when I read it. I loved it so much. It really reminded me of like Wuthering Heights, and the sort of way that they talk about love in that book is very similar, and I just remember being in love with it, like so in love. Find Me came out a while ago and I got it straight away. I had it pre-ordered, I was so excited, and I just didn't pick it up. I don't know why. Most beautiful cover ever, like it's so beautiful, this dust jacket. And yeah, I just had a bit of a reading slump, wasn't picking up the things that would make me want to read, which is why I was in a reading slump. But for some reason I didn't then decide to pick up the books I wanted to read. Didn't pick this up for ages, and then what happened was I read another book that was a sequel and I loved it, and it's in this video, so I will not tell you what it is, but I loved it so much. And when I'd finished it, it made me immediately think about this and kind of look towards it and be like, maybe I should read that, maybe I should see how that one is. And I did, and it's not as good. It's not as good as Call Me By Your Name, it's not as good as the other sequel. It's just all around not as good. Yeah, I have very differing opinions to other people in that I actually liked the first section of this, which follows Elio's father Samuel. So it basically opens with him on a train and he meets someone, and it's one of those like meet someone and instantly fall in love with them sort of things, which I liked. I think I liked that there was still this focus on love within here, sort of the nature of love and how to be in love, how to act in love, how to feel love, and all of those things. Like, I really enjoyed that. His books just feel like they're a meditation on love rather than just fiction about it, if that makes sense. So yeah, to say, I really enjoyed the first section. Second section followed Elio, and I was confused. I didn't like it. It was so repetitive of what had just happened in the first section that I was like, is this a joke? And then the third section was Oliver, I think, and it was really short, and the thing happened that's supposed to be the thing that would make everyone happy, but it didn't feel like it had been worked towards. It just felt like it was given. And I just didn't enjoy it. So yeah, my notes as I finished it were that it was very self-indulgent. Yeah, my point with that is that this book isn't necessary. It didn't need to be written. If anything, it takes away from the original Call Me By Your Name, and it does it a disservice. And I feel like it was only done because maybe it was known that it'd make a lot of money, so it's like, well, maybe we should write a sequel. Which I hope that wasn't what it was, but it feels like that. It feels like a cash grab, to be honest. Overall, I don't think it was necessary, and that was where the issue came from. Yeah, we talked about that. And then, yeah, all the relationships were very repetitive. That's the main thing that bothered me, to be honest. The relationship between Samuel and the girl that he meets is very much about the fact that he is a lot older and that they can still have a relationship, that love can span years and age ranges and whatever. But that's also the same point about Elio and a guy that he is dating, and then the point at the end with Oliver and who he ends up with. And it was just, yeah, it was just all very, very repetitive. And there were these things in Call Me By Your Name that happened outside of the main plot that I really enjoyed. Elio kind of dealing with his own personal stuff and not necessarily liking Oliver straight away when they'd like slept together or whatever, because there was so much going on, and there was the girl that he knew really well who lived near him who ended up dying. Just all of these things were going on as well, and this, like, nothing else was happening. It was just annoying. So I gave it 3 stars. 3 stars was probably generous, to be honest. I gave it 3 stars because it looks fucking beautiful, and I actually liked the first section of it. But yeah, it's just unnecessary. I probably should have given it 2 stars, actually, thinking about it. The next book we have is We Come Apart, and this is by Sarah Crossan and Brian Conaghan? I have no idea how to say that. But I gave this one 3.5 stars, and I actually did really enjoy it. I think the end was a bit weird, and that's why it's not got higher. But I don't think 3.5 encompasses my enjoyment of it, because I did actually really enjoy this book. I've never read anything by Brian Conaghan before, but I've read a lot of Sarah Crossan at this point and really enjoy her work. And immediately when I was reading this, I could tell the section she'd wrote. Like, so much. It, not even just in the writing style, it was in like the themes that were coming up. And domestic abuse is such a huge thing with Sarah Crossan books. Like, across most of them that I've read, there's been this kind of underlying violence, a lot of the time domestic. This was no different. So this book follows Jess and Niku. Niku has come to this country. I think he is Romanian. Yeah, he's Romanian, and his parents have brought him to England because they basically need to like boost their money. So they've come over, they want to work over here, kind of making off for what is essentially a dowry for him to get a wife, and then take him back. So I think the idea is that it's going to be like a year tops. Jess is a teenager who is struggling a lot, because she, yeah, is in a house of a lot of domestic violence and a lot of unsurety, and obviously that is making her act out a lot. and so they both end up doing basically community service because they do something wrong and meet each other during this community service. The end of this book is insane, like fully insane. It's like edge of your seat drama. Was not expecting it to have that much of a plot twist, dramatic ending that it did. Oh, and also I forgot to mention, it's kind of written like poems, like blank verse poetry. Yeah, and we flip between Niku's narrative and Jess's narrative. But yeah, anyway, the ending is so dramatic and I really enjoyed it, but it just felt weird. And yeah, I don't know how to explain it. It just wasn't ideal for me. So then I ended up giving it 3.5 stars. But I would really recommend this book. And just Sarah Crossan in general. I think I've not read Here Come the Bees. I've not read The Weight of Water. And I've not read Apple and Rain. I think they're the only Sarah Crossan books at this point that I've not read. And I definitely want to read the rest. Like, I'm such a big Sarah Crossan fan. I think she gets across so much description for the fact that it's blank verse and there's no actual explanations in there really. And Brian Conahan fit into that perfectly as well. He was amazing at doing the same thing. All of Niku's sections are kind of written with him. Obviously he's from Romania. He doesn't speak the best English, but he can speak English. But he struggles. It's written really well in that it doesn't take you out of the story and you can always understand what's happening. And Niku's point of view chapters, you always get what he's trying to say, but there's always little grammatical errors that make you always constantly remember how much he is struggling to be in a country that's not his own and isn't his native tongue. And that is phenomenal. Like, really would highly recommend this book for the writing because it's really good. This feels like a really long video and I feel like there's not a ton of books here, but yeah, maybe when I edit it it'll be shorter. It won't. I know it won't. Next is my first book I read this year and I gave it 4 stars. That's a pretty good start to the year, to be honest. And it is Ethel in Earnest by Raymond Briggs. I can't believe it's taken me so long to read this graphic novel when it's actually one of the graphic novels that everybody talks about. It's so popular and Raymond Briggs himself is obviously so famous for all the work that he has done. Like, there's The Snowman. I'll genuinely be honest, I've looked at buying this before and it was very expensive and it felt like it was really short and I was like, that's a lot of money to spend on a book that is really, really short, and so I didn't buy it. And my best friend got it me for Christmas and I'm glad that she did because I actually really enjoyed it and it is worth the money. But I didn't know before, so don't judge me. Art style wise, this book is wonderful. A lot of the time it's set during like the Second World War, and so we get a lot of drab illustrations, very dark, but in a really good way. Like, I really enjoyed it. And this is basically Raymond Briggs' story about his mum and dad and how his mum and dad met. We see his mum as a maid at the beginning and then she packs a job in to go and marry Ernest, and it's about how they get their first house and the jobs they have, going through the war together. Raymond moves away as an evacuee and goes and lives outside of London, and you know, it's about like the letters that they write to each other then and when he comes back and just their entire life. So I don't know if I've mentioned this on a vlog or something, but I picked this up because it was technically New Year's Day. We were watching Jules Holland. All of the bells had gone off because we were staying in Richmond for New Year, and yeah, all the bells went off and it was like, oh my god, it's New Year, woo, all of that stuff. And literally like 10 minutes after my partner was like, right, I've done that now, I'm going to bed, I'm so tired. It's like, okay, fair enough. And I was tired, but you know when you're like, I'm tired but I'm so awake because I'm buzzed that stuff's going on. So I decided to stay up and have a bit of a read, and this is what I reached for, and I ended up just sitting and reading the whole thing probably in like an hour, which yeah, this is a perfect like reading one sitting book. And I was sobbing at the end of it, like literally sobbing. I remember I put the book down, cuddled up to my partner and was just like, please don't ever leave me. Please don't die. I can't. I don't think I'd cope. I would be this. This would be me. It was just a lot, but I really, really enjoyed it. I would really, really recommend this book. It's cute. It's so cute. I loved it. So yeah, highly recommend this guy. I don't know what to do because it seems like I should talk about one book first, because one of these books I gave 5 stars and one of these books I gave 4 stars. However, one of them has really stayed with me and I've been really thinking about. But then one of them I can't stop talking about and made me pick up other books and was just a big deal to me. So it's hard because I don't know which order. So what we're going to do is I'm going to talk about both of them. Just ignore what order I talk about them. Imagine I'm talking about them both at the same time. I can't do that because I'm just not that intelligent, and also it'd make it really hard to watch. But imagine I'm talking about them both at the same time because they are tying for my affection and I really enjoyed them both. The first one is, of course, Here's to Us by Adam Silvera and Becky Albertalli. Now, this is another book where if you watch my channel, you will know how much I loved What If It's Us by these two. Oh my god, it was such a good book for me. I loved it so much. It's a contemporary romance between 2 guys who are living in New York at the time. One of them wants to be a writer, and he's just like dealing with imposter syndrome and like whether he can actually do it and whether he should set all of his sights on being a writer. And the other one wants to like act on Broadway. He's obsessed with musicals. So like all the way through there's just a lot of like references to musical theatre, which I love, references to books, which I love, references to just everything, just popular culture is really big in this book, and I loved it. And then I found out this was coming out, and can I tell you now, they have put this book back a lot. It was meant to come out in like the summer, then it was supposed to come out before Christmas. It didn't end up coming out until the 28th of December, so I had to wait a really long time for this book, and I'm still a bit annoyed about it. But I got it in the end, and it is a sequel, so I'm not really going to tell you what it's about because it'll spoil the first one for anyone who's not read it. But this is really good. It delivers what you want. It's exactly the same as the first. Like, it basically picks up where it left off. Find Me, it doesn't feel like a sequel to Call Me By Your Name. It kind of feels like a different book, maybe like a sister book, but not like the sequel, if you get what I mean. Whereas this is just a continuation of the first one, and I loved it so much. And the end, oh my god, I was squealing. The pile is growing. I'm gonna check this camera because I'm worried I'm not gonna have enough space. I have 9 minutes. 9 minutes should definitely be enough. I didn't read the physical copy, I listened to the audiobook, which is an audiobook I've had for ages. I got it on Audible so long ago and just didn't read it. I think that was because it was the last book that I had left to read by one of my favourite authors in the entire world, and I have now read everything she's got out, and the only reason that I was okay with reading this last one is because she has a new book coming out, which, let me tell you, is a very exciting prospect for me. Have we guessed who it is yet? Do we know? Do we not? I bet you don't. The book she has coming out comes out on May 12th, 2022. Have we guessed it yet? It's called Idol. Ooh, do we know it? This book follows somebody who has a fan base, I think is a social media type of person. I don't know whether it's TikTok or YouTube. She writes an essay about her sexual awakening as a teenager with her female best friend. She's never told anyone, but she decides to tell the world, and the essay goes viral. And then this person comes forward and she has a very different memory of what happened that night, far darker than the main characters. Dramatic. Do we know who it is yet? Do we know who would be writing a book about such strong issues to do with women and social media, how women are presented, how women are taken advantage of? Who could possibly have written this? Of course it's Louise O'Neill. Of course. I love Louise O'Neill. So yeah, I've never read everything by Louise O'Neill, but that book is giving me hope. So because I have a book coming out now, I allowed myself to read the last book that I had not read by her, which was the first book that she ever had come out, which is Only Ever Yours. Calling myself a Louise O'Neill fan and never having read that book was a bit weird. I don't know what it was, I just kept clinging on to it, and I kind of had this thing that I needed to have read The Handmaid's Tale before I read Only Ever Yours, because so many people compared them. Not necessary at all. Only Ever Yours is phenomenal. So it is a dystopian book. It is set when I think women kind of became extinct, and then they could only be created, like scientifically created. The idea is that they are created as vessels to do what men want. They either go into the profession of being a wife, being someone who trains and schools girls into being good wives or whatever job they go on to, and then I think there's concubines, which I think is basically just like a sexual partner. There was a few different jobs, and this story takes place following a main character who is in the school. It's before she's like chosen what path she's gonna go down, and they constantly like rate the girls from like 1 to 10, and then there's the ones that don't even get a rating, all just based off how beautiful they are, whether they're clever, but it's mainly just like what do they look like, how big are they, how small are they, like weight wise, what does the hair look like, what do the nails look like, how much do they judge each other. And it was so good. It was such a good like commentary on like women attacking women, and like everyone seems to just promote the kind of pitting women against women, and this book has such a like encompassing thing of women against women and why that is such a terrible thing, and I loved it so much. I can't even remember what the main character's called now, which is annoying. In my head I'm thinking Ruth, and I don't think it is Ruth. Anyway, yeah, I really liked the main character. I think she wasn't the most likable person ever, but she was a perfect main character for this story. There was also Isabel, who I loved throughout this book, and it was one of those where you just, the whole time you're reading, you're like, what is with Isabel? You're like, the main character kind of knows there's something going on, but she can't twig to get her head to the part that there's something going on. So she's constantly obsessed with Isabel, but she doesn't think to really figure out that there's something there to think about. But obviously as a reader you figure that out, and so the whole time you're like, what is this with Isabel? Just fucking ask her questions, but you're not figuring it out enough to ask her questions, and that's very infuriating. This book took such a turn, and from initially reading it you think that you know where it's gonna go, and yeah, it's probably gonna have a depressing end, she's gonna get married off, and you know, it's just gonna be the same as everyone else, like this depressing future that all women have to have, and it doesn't do that. There's actually an insane plot twist that happens that goes on for pages and pages and pages. There's like the plot twist with her and the relationships that she's having, there's the plot twist of information that she's given that she shouldn't be given, there's plot twists with Isabel, there's plot twists with, there's just so much, and I loved it so much. I have always thought that this would not rate very highly on my Louise O'Neill like hierarchy of books, but actually I think it does, and so I'm considering doing a video talking about all of Louise O'Neill's books and rating them as well. So that's probably going to come soon. I don't know whether I'll do that before or after her new book comes out, but then I'll have to read her new book, and then I will definitely not have any more Louise O'Neill books, which is a struggle and something that I don't want to deal with. I just love Louise O'Neill. She just talks about things that no one else is talking about in terms of like women's issues, and she's a genius. I love her. If I could write like Louise O'Neill and really make points, like she makes such good points with her books, but even though you're thinking about it and it's really stimulating your thought about these issues, at the same time you are just reading and enjoying a story. Like it doesn't feel like someone's trying to force feed a message down your throat, which I love. So yeah, Louise O'Neill, what a woman. What a woman. We love her. These are all the books that I read this month. I don't really want to pick them up because I'm lazy. So there they are. My favourites were Here's to Us and Only Ever Yours. Obviously, I've made that clear. If you've read any of these books and want to talk to me about them, please do in the comments down below. And yeah, I will see you in my next video. Bye!